What's up everyone? Brandon here from Gearist. Today we're going in depth with the S-Lab wings from Salomon. If you're not familiar with Salomon's S-Lab project, then what it basically is your and my ability to get our hands on the same gear that the pros use. On the one hand, that's amazing because it gives us access to some of the coolest and most advanced gear that Salomon puts out, but on the other hand, it comes with a price. That's where we have to answer the "is it worth it" question. Well, today we hope to get that question answered, among others, regarding this shoe right here, the S-Lab Wings, which is a shoe meant to rip off some seriously fast trail crushing miles. Of course, that depends on if your legs are capable of moving that fast. So let's start with the outsole. Now, before we really get going with this review, as with other things in the S-Lab line and other shoes in Salomon's running shoe line, there is an SG or soft ground version of this shoe. The one we're going to be taking a look at today is the standard. You can see right there the lugs are not super deep. This is the pretty standard S-Lab Wings, but that S-Lab soft ground wings is going to have deeper lugs, a little more made to be on that soft, muddy ground, maybe kind of Pacific Northwest, East Coast Appalachian Trail type stuff. Kind of bucking the trend that we've seen of late, this is not a full contact outsole. It looks like it's pretty close to it, but there is a subtle rise right here under the midfoot, under the arch, a little bit of a cutaway. That being said, it breaks down the rubber into two main sections that we can see here. The front half of the shoe, basically front 2/3 if you will, and the rear half or third of the shoe. This makes it really flexible throughout that area, but the lugs in the front half are oriented for ascending, climbing basically, so they're oriented pointing back this way, and the lugs in the rear foot are oriented for descending, because one of the things that Salomon advertises for this shoe is that it's really capable of ripping off some fast technical descents. And as far as depth goes, each of these lugs that is arranged on the outsole is set at 2 millimeters of depth, roughly. Now, to touch on the exact purpose of this shoe, Salomon touts this as a racer, and while I've never raced in it per se, I've certainly pushed the pace on some miles, and I have to say that regardless of the fact that these lugs are only roughly 2 millimeters deep, this thing can really stick to the ground very well. Now, part of that is certainly chalked up to the arrangement, the design of the lugs, but another part of that is something that I first saw at outdoor retailer Winter Market in Salt Lake City this January, and that was Salomon's updated Contagrip rubber. Now, we've seen Contagrip in other shoes, but in this shoe, it's an updated compound. Now, to demonstrate this updated Contagrip rubber at outdoor retailer this past January, the way they did that was they had a marble slab basically set up. It looked kind of like a treadmill on an angle, and what they had you do is they had you put on an updated version of Contagrip rubber. I don't know if it was the S-Lab Wings or not, and then the previous version, the normal standard up to that point of Contagrip rubber shoe. Now, the way they had it done is you'd stand on this slab and there were two handles on the side, again kind of like a treadmill with a bracing, and you had to sign a release in case you fell and broke your jaw, and then they would let water go down this thing, and it was truly impressive. Like, right away I thought it was gonna be like, oh, that's not really, I mean, that's kind of cool, but it was amazing. I mean, right away you could feel where the left shoe, which was mine, had the Contagrip, the new Contagrip on the right foot. The left shoe was sticking okay, but then when you start to step, because this was polished marble, it would just start to, or polished granite, it would just start to slip off. The other side, this rubber right here, freaking stuck to it. It was unbelievable. Sure, if you really were pushing it, maybe you could get it, but you couldn't run on this thing. It wasn't like an actual treadmill, but it was amazing to feel the amount of grip. And so, with its descents, with its ascents, with its capability of sticking to wet rocks, and even flat rocks, dry rocks, what have you, this new updated Contagrip rubber is very impressive. With all that in mind, when I've been out running in this, no matter the terrain, I've really had this kind of added ability to be confident on those descents especially. It's very impressive rubber, very impressive stick for a racing shoe. And speaking of this as a racer, I should comment on the durability. You know, generally speaking, we don't really see a racer as being a super durable shoe, but this guy right here has about 60 miles on it, which is, if you watch our reviews, you know, is usually about 20 more miles than we put on most shoes just because of time. But this guy has 60 miles on it, and there's really not much wear at all to speak of. There's a little bit of wear right here on the lateral forefoot into the midfoot, which we see typically on any shoe, whether it's a road shoe or a trail shoe, but it's really holding up extraordinarily well. The midsole of the S-Lab Wings is something that I think people are going to have kind of mixed feelings about. But first, let's talk about the actual technical aspects of that. And that is that number one, it appears to be a dual density shoe with right underfoot some injection molded EVAs a little bit softer than the remainder of the EVA below it. The rest of the midsole material is what makes up the 27mm stack height in the heel, 18mm stack height in the forefoot for a net drop of 9mm. Now, while I really like to stick to something in that low drop category, which I consider to be about 6mm and under, this races very well. It does not feel like you're way up at a 12mm stack height shoe or something like that. Very, very appropriate for the type of running that you're going to be doing, especially on trails. Also embedded in that midsole is Salomon's Profil film, a bit of which you can see right kind of in that gap right there. This is a very thin and very flexible rock plate because I should demonstrate the flexibility of this shoe without sacrificing any of that torsional rigidity or other things you might want to see on a really aggressive trail shoe. The feel of the midsole of the S-Lab Wings is firm. Now this is something that I really like, but it's certainly something that's not going to be for everyone. This is designated as an ultra distance racing shoe, but again, I feel like this is something that's very, very relative to the taste of the runner. How much cushioning do you want to have underfoot over the long haul? Now this certainly does help with the softer cushion right underfoot, but in general that ground feel might aggravate some people over a period of time. I will say that relative to some other shoes in the S-Lab line, especially something like the Sense 4 or 5 Ultra, this does have more cushion, but if you're looking for a super cushion shoe, this is not it. I should also add that right out of the box, this shoe felt great to me. In fact, the first day that I ran in the shoe, I had gotten a blister on my foot the day before from something else, and so I was like, oh crap, what shoe am I going to wear? I still have to get out and run, get on the trail, and this is the shoe that I chose to wear, and I still was able to crank out the miles with no problem whatsoever. While I was very comfortable in this right out of the box and didn't feel a super big break-in period or something where it was going to be uncomfortable at first and then more comfortable, what this worked out for me was it was comfortable out of the box, worked for me right out of the box. However, as I began to put miles on it, I noticed that the shoe kind of evolved to my foot a little bit and really adapted to my running style, my gait, my footfall, and so on and so forth. So while this may translate as a break-in period to some people, for me, it just made it more and more comfortable. While what happens underfoot in the shoe is certainly the crux of everything, it would not be able to function nearly as well as it does without the upper of this guy. Now, the body of this is made from a 3D stretch air mesh, which we really love, and regardless of its pretty tightly woven nature, which you may be able to see there, it's actually fairly breathable. It does a good job. And the fine interior backing also keeps out the really finer debris, though dust and the really fine like powder dust can still get in there. But when is that not the case with shoes? In order to really talk about the upper of the S-Lab Wings, we have to talk about two Salomon technologies, which we have touched on before in other Salomon shoes, and that is SensoFit and EndoFit. Now, first up, SensoFit. That is kind of an external cage right here. It kind of just basically looks like the strapping on this shoe. That is going to really create an external support cage. It's going to hold the foot in place, really wrap that midfoot especially, and work with the foot, especially when you're on more technical terrain. Backing up that SensoFit from the inside out and working in concert with it is EndoFit. This is kind of an internal sleeve which we find right here in the midfoot of this shoe. It actually also acts as the tongue gussets, which you may be able to see there, and goes all the way down into the midsole of the shoe. When these two things work together, not only does it create this really supportive nature, but it also makes the shoe feel lighter than it is. This shoe for me in my size 11 comes in at 10.4 ounces, and a men's size 9 comes in at 9.8 ounces. Not the lightest thing in the world, but again, the feel of this thing on your foot is really taken out of there by the EndoFit and SensoFit working together. All the support structure of this, including the SensoFit itself and all the way around, basically a full rand with one little tiny gap exception right over here, is made of bonded overlays. All of these are really strong and actually form a really nice toe bumper, which we can see right up here. Not only is this kind of more, it's like a triple, quadruple layer of the same material, it's a little more rubberized, but this is going to add also a lot of toe shape in that area, which we're going to touch on more in the fit section. The lacing system on the S-Lab Wings is Salomon's regular old quick lace system, which we really like. Right here you can see that. Kind of pull the slide out, loosen things up. Now, if you've not used this before, I've used it several times in several other shoes in the past, so I got it dialed pretty quickly. However, if you've not used this before, getting it really right on with your foot might take you a second, so be patient. It is worth it. It's very comfortable. The heel counter on this guy is pretty flexible actually up at the top. It gets a little more rigid as you get down to the bottom with a really nicely shaped heel cup. Now, the collar foam, the collar and the tongue foam. The foam on the tongue is really thin and minimal. Around the collar, there's more of it. Now, keeping in mind that this is an ultra distance racing shoe by its definition, there's more foam, I feel like, than probably needs to be here, but not by much. It's like on that edge where it doesn't bother me at all. This is very comfortable over long distances. When I've had this up to, I think I want to say 14 miles, I've been very comfortable, haven't noticed it pushing me forward, but it just stays nice and compact and keeps the foot nicely held in there. With regard to fit, let me first say that the sizing of this was right on for me. My size 11 foot fit exactly where I expected it to. I will say that from time to time, some people feel the need to go up by about a half size in Salomon shoes. So if you feel like you might need to do that, definitely order 2 sizes and then just return the one that you don't need to. With regard to the actual fit, as I've said several times, this is a real racer. And while there's more fit than something like a Saucony Type A6 or a hardcore road racer, there is still a racing pedigree in this shoe, and it is capable of being seen pretty quickly. Now, in my very average foot, which is neither narrow nor wide, it's just smack down the middle, I fit very nicely in this from a width perspective and an overall volume perspective. If you have a wider foot, you may have a little bit of a hard time fitting into this, so definitely be sure to play with it a little bit, see where you're comfortable. Beginning with the rear of the shoe, the heel counter is really nice in this. I like the way that it's shaped, both by the rigidity of the bottom of the heel counter there, the looseness up top, and the supports that fit it from the top, as well as the fact that this midsole material does come up and over the upper there, kind of forming a nice cup. It allows you to easily handle some corners, turns, jumps, things like that should you need to. Moving into the midfoot of this shoe, as I mentioned already, the Senso fit and the Endo fit of this do a great job. I feel like I've said this before with some other shoes, including the Sense 5 Ultra and the S-Lab X series, but the Senso fit and the Endo fit do a nice job of gently cradling the foot. This is especially important, I feel like, when you are bombing those descents for which this shoe is meant, because your foot is nicely held in place rather than jamming down into the front of the shoe. Finally, the toe box of this guy is actually really well shaped, as I mentioned, because of this toe bumper. It has a good amount of wiggle room vertically, which I really liked, and while it certainly could stand a little bit more room, which again I say pretty much about every shoe over here on the lateral side, there's actually a lot of solid room in there, which is very comfortable, especially when you feel like you're getting into the miles and trying to bomb those descents. You don't want to feel like you're crammed into the front, and I certainly do not. The ride of the shoe is where all of those construction pieces that we've been talking about so far come together and make this one of my favorite trail shoes of 2016. This is able to bomb descents, really crush going uphill because of its relatively lightweight, although it is not a lightweight trail shoe, but it does feel as though it is. Where it is lacking is on some looser terrain and some wetter terrain and things like that where it might be a little muddy. But again, that's why there is an S-Lab Wings SG soft ground version that is meant for stuff like that. Here in Colorado, the majority of the time, it is really pretty dry, and even on those big rocks, even when we get rain on those rocks, that updated Contact Grip rubber does a nice job gripping things and really making up for the fact that this does not have the deepest lugs in the world. The midsole of the shoe is again where I think some people may have a little bit of mixed feelings about it. If you don't like a firm, good ground feeling underfoot ride, then that may be something that you want to consider. You may want an extra insole or something like that that's going to put a little more cushioning under there. For me, it was perfect, and in fact, this is one of the shoes that I'm seriously considering for part of the TransRockies run this coming summer. Apart from the firmness and everything, when I got this onto more groomed trails, this thing felt like a speedy road shoe as opposed to a 10+ ounce trail racer. The shoe likes to go and is no problem ripping off fast miles. Fast being a very relative term. Now, with all the great things that I've liked about the shoe and told you guys about so far, it does have a pretty big knock, and that is the price tag. While high prices are nothing new to those of you familiar with the S-Lab line, I will say that $180 where this guy comes in is quite steep. Now, before all the WTFs and hell no's stop, let me just say that there's some caveats to that. This is a very durable shoe as far as I have observed. At 60 miles, there's very little wear. It's holding together very well. So if you break it out mile per cost or cost per mile, it's not such a huge deal. On the other hand, if $180 is digging into your shoe budget too much, just wait, because this will eventually begin to come down, as will the other shoes. And in fact, you can go try previous versions of this shoe. And there's also a Wings Pro model. The kind of models from Salomon go S-Lab, Pro, and then kind of the regular line. So there's nothing wrong with looking outside and thinking outside the box to still get your hands on a really solid shoe like this. I am seriously impressed by the S-Lab Wings. That's why I'm considering it for part of the TransRockies run this year. And to be honest, I've got so many trail shoes to review right now that it was really hard for me to say goodbye to this for the time being while I get caught up on those shoes that are in the hopper, because I love running in this so much. The quality and construction of this shoe and the fact that it can dig out some really fast miles is extremely impressive. Before we get you guys the question of the day, please don't forget to like and favorite this video, and please subscribe to our channel. Guys, I can't tell you how much we really want to hammer on subscribing right now, because our subscribership is what grows our channel, grows our website, Gearist.com, and helps us to bring you guys more great and engaging content. Now, our question of the day. Yes, $180 is a ton of money for a running shoe. However, let's think about it macroeconomically. If you could get a shoe, let's say this shoe right here can get 400 miles at $180, or you can get a shoe for $100 that's going to get 250 miles, and you're going to have to buy more of those shoes, and eventually the cost of that will overtake this shoe based on durability and performance. What is it worth to you? Where is that breaking point, that line of demarcation? Do you like that low price up front that you might have to pay more for over time because you're going to buy more of them? Or do you prefer to get one shoe that's going to last you a long time, do exactly what you want to do with the quality, speed, and protection that you want? Let us know down in the comments section below. Guys, thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us today. If you've got any questions at all, don't hesitate to email info@gearist.com or reach out to us on all of our social media outlets, where we would love to hear from you, and you can use the hashtag I'mAGearist, I'mAGearist, to reach out to us. Also, please don't forget to visit Gearist.com, the home base of all this mayhem that we've got going on here. Thank you guys so much for watching and spending your time with us today, and we will see you next time.